Appreciate you calling me, and I commend the young lady for speaking in a low voice about HIV and AIDS. And yet still, we've been on this subject for the past 35 or 40 years. And then my question is, what does CDC, what is the language? Is changing the language. The church must be able to talk about sex, and they must be able to use some illustration. What illustration were they able to give from the Bible to teach us about AIDS and HIV? Because this way the presentation that you made was great, but in the meantime, that ain't doing nothing for us because there's a great fear in the church about sex, and we don't want to talk about it. We got to be able to jar the ministers, regardless whether you're black or white, whether you're Baptist, Catholic, to be able to talk about sex with HIV and AIDS. That's the problem.
Yes, sir.
What do you plan to do about the problem?
Yes, sir.
Other than coming in here and doing this?
I've been fortunate enough to travel the country, and we've trained over 2,000 faith leaders affecting 1.3 million congregants. And as I say, I don't control your pulpit. Said from my pulpit, there'll be condoms on the back table and communion on the front. Said because we have to be about saving lives and saving souls. Said that's the basic principle. That we have to save lives as well as save souls. If we don't keep them alive long enough, we'll never get to the plan of salvation or whatever your faith does. So when it comes to your pulpit, nobody's stopping you from talking about sex from a biblical perspective.
All right, number 2. Terry Rebecca Thomas, I'm speaking to you as a matter of public access and expression, People TV. As vice chair and a former teacher for 20 years, we're not dealing with morality, but education in terms of informing students their options. I want to know, as I did when this first came up, what does this have to do with biological warfare? And explain to us why has it persisted so long?
I think, again, there's the disease and there's the dis-ease. This campaign deals with the dis-ease, which talks about stigma. So a lot of times we talk about biological warfare, we want to talk about conspiracy theory, etc., but we have to understand that HIV is preventable. Said 9/11, conspiracy theory. Nobody in the building could do anything to keep themselves from getting killed. But HIV is preventable. So we can have a conversation, because that has come up in this room before. But again, HIV is preventable. So the message that we're trying to get out with the faith community is about the stigma behind HIV. We have medication, we have access to care. There's a lot of programs that are out there to help people with HIV, for the mind, for the body, but who's going to take care of the soul?
Now, how can Matabuda say it was in the military installation that this was concocted?
I understand that. Again, that's a theory, and I hear where you're coming from, but we're talking about the stigma that is around HIV. We have folks that have not shared their status, so that are literally not getting care or not being taken care of because of the stigma that's associated with HIV. That's the disease that you're talking about, and this campaign deals with the dis-ease.
All right, number 3.
In dealing with the stigma, it may be sort of helpful to provide information on the fact that there's medication available that can result, if the person is adherent, of not passing the disease on.
Absolutely.
And therein is an effort to remove one element of the stigma, is the fact that I may catch something from this. But by educating people about the fact that there's medication to prevent the passing on of the disease that is now available, that wasn't there years ago when all of this other stigma was coming about.
That's absolutely right. And I would encourage you guys to visit the CDC website, because we have information, scientifically backed information about PrEP, about other things as they relate to HIV. So the stigma, together with the stigma campaign, we also have a PrEP testing campaign and provide information about PrEP.
All right, number 4.
I was down at City Hall a couple months ago, and there was 24 or 27 million dollars that has been allocated to go to AIDS community, and it was not given for one reason, because they said they could not find no operators. 24 million dollars that would go to establish housing and operators to give counseling and services to people who have AIDS. So our elected officials are failing to do the job. But the big question is, what is the impact when they don't do the job, when the resources are not available? You have young men staying on the street. You have prostitution going on. You have fakes and lies that's going to impact our community in great ways, because when a person is homeless, they do desperate things. So it's another thing that our community is not getting the services they need. But what is your organization doing? Because I can't say I've seen you at City Hall. I've seen this come up numerous of times. But for sure, as citizens, we need to be held and our elected officials responsible for turning that money over and finding the operators to do the service.
Okay, the fund that you're talking about is called a HOPA, which is Housing Opportunities for People with HIV and AIDS, and that program is actually going to be cut drastically from the 24 million to 9 million. So what can we do is to advocate. I know the CDC can't advocate, but my organization does advocate for housing opportunities across the board, including those living with HIV. So we really need an organization like the Concerned Black Clergy to advocate for Mayor Bottoms, to do more in reference to those housing programs.
Well, why is she cutting it?
I'm sorry?
Why is she cutting this fund?
Said it's just government cuts, different things of that nature. The advocacy is not there. We advocate for homelessness, but we don't advocate for those that are homeless living with HIV.
Number 5.
Yes. How do I let go of the fear and then have a meaningful relationship with a woman with HIV infected? When you tell the story of how you're ravaging the community, you tell me to let go of the fear. Then you tell me the story of a husband who has HIV, a wife, and then a child that gets HIV. And I can't tell how it got there. It's kind of a mystified story that gives me no comfort in how it happened, how to deal with it. So how can you help me with that?
I always find that to be an interesting question, because we have a fear of the known, i.e. that you know that this person has HIV, but we never fear the unknown. So for transparency, did I not sleep with people growing up that I never asked their status? Yeah, I did. But would I then sleep with somebody that I knew their status? And that may be where the fear comes in. So I think it all boils down to education. As Minister Foote said, there's medication out there called PrEP, pre-exposure prophylaxis, that a HIV negative person could take to prevent themselves from being diagnosed with HIV. And then there's also for the person living with HIV, if they are taking their medication in proper care, they can be undetectable, and science is showing that if somebody is undetectable, it's, I can't say 100%, but in the high 90s of them not transmitting HIV to their partner.
All right, number 6.
Yes, I wanted to know, how is it possible for a person to have HIV and then another person just has the virus? Is that the same thing?
Yeah, HIV, well.
HIV is the virus. And once you can have the virus, but if you take your medication and you obtain an undetectable viral load, then you don't pass that on to other people. So HIV is not the death sentence that it used to be a long time ago. We got to the point where people are living long and healthy lives. So that's the good news. But the problem is, if people don't understand that and they don't take the medication, then that's when you run into those issues. But
maybe I used the wrong word. I thought about carrier. Someone can be a carrier and someone else can
no such thing.
You would still, if I have HIV, I am a carrier of human immunodeficiency virus. When you hear AIDS, that still means I have HIV. That's just how my HIV has progressed. So that's more of a medical term. But if you contract HIV, you have HIV, you can take medication and become undetectable, but that still means you have HIV.
Thank you.
Number 7.
I think that's me. I want to thank you for coming out because I know that this is a very challenging conversation in our community. It has been for the last 15, 20 years, and it continues to be. I think sometimes we get lost in the stigma and we don't really talk about what are we going to do.
Excuse me, Doc, I need you to speak a little louder.
Okay.
This is our medical doctor here, so speak a little louder. So we can
What are
understand.
we going to do as a community, even if those conspiracy theories pan out? But what are we going to do today, not tomorrow, not to look to the past, to see what happened on how we can stop the progression of this disease that's ravaging our community? Because we tend to get upset and angry at individuals bringing information, trying to educate our community. And I'll tell you, HIV and then being diagnosed with the clinical diagnosis of AIDS are two different things. It means that your CD4 count has dropped to the lower 200. So it's a clinical diagnosis of AIDS. Until you ever see someone waste away on our young men and women from AIDS, it is a terrible thing. Sometimes we have to remember the sexual transmission is not the only way that HIV is transmitted. In the medical community, we use universal precautions. We assume that everybody in this room is HIV positive until otherwise we can determine otherwise. So we take precautions. But sometimes with those precautions are not enough. When surgeons are in the operating room and they nick themselves with the scalpel and they are operating on a person that has a diagnosis of AIDS, then that person is in risk of developing AIDS themselves. But if we think that that's a stigma, then we ostracize those individuals, so they're not going to come out and ask for help. We don't ask for help for hypertension, diabetes, obesity, so where are we going to stop? A lot of things are just tearing us apart as a community.
Yes.
So sometimes we need to arm ourselves with the information. Get as much information as you can so you can make an intelligible conversation. You'll be surprised. One day, somebody is going to come to you and ask you, what do you do? Because they may, have HIV. What do you do? Do you stigmatize that person? Do you say they live an alternative lifestyle? Or they sleeping around? And a lot of the young people out there, that's what's happening. They don't feel safe coming in a place like this. So we turn them away even before they get in the room. And then they don't know where to go seek help. And then we ostracize. Yeah, the CDC people look at them different ways, but as the sister said, she's out here trying to provide information. I know Reverend Francis, this has become a passion for him. And sometimes when you come to talk to our people, that's the most difficult thing to do. And so sometimes I would say, we just need to get the information, do what we can. But even if it's we got the biggest person right now residing at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue that is wreaking more havoc on our community. That's a stigma. That's the conspiracy. But what are we doing about it? We got to go vote, but most of us not. So vote for somebody's life and find out what you can do to help that person from developing AIDS. Because once it gets to that CD4 count and they come on their medication, medication might not work. It might not be effective. And then they just race away from any universal things. So thank you again for being here.
And let us not walk out of the room thinking that HIV is a young disease. Because Sister Cialis, Sister Viagra, and Sister Levitra that are also, because y'all didn't get that?
Yes. Say it again.
Those ain't targeted at young folks. It's targeted at our older generation. And the plus 50 is the second largest group that is being diagnosed with STDs and HIV. Just thought I'd throw it in there. My grandmother's sake.
Number 8. Number 8, please.
Why do we think there's such a great sensitivity in the church toward people with the disease? That just always, I'm just shocked. When you think compassion should be the key, compassion is not the key at all. I remember when I was in seminary, there was this family, the mother had HIV, later developed AIDS, and got to the point where no one in the congregation would sit on the pew at all with the entire family. It got that bad. But again, a basic question, why do you think there's such a great stigmatism in the church? From church, folks, toward people with this disease.
When it comes to HIV, we want to focus on the morality. But as Dr. Figures said, if I said I had cancer, you don't ask me what type of cigarettes. If I said I had blood pressure, you wouldn't ask me pork or ham. If I said I had diabetes, you don't ask me cake or pie. But when it comes to HIV, you want to know the who first, the what, the where, the why, the when, and the how. And I think morality is the first issue. And then I think it is the stigma that we place around HIV. And if you think about it, cancer used to be stigmatized, and now it seems to be cool, if you would, especially in a faith-based setting where we're October, we'll have our deacons, deaconesses, we'll do Pink Sundays, different things of that nature. So something has to shift, and I think campaigns like the CDC has put out around stigma, and self-stigma is a good start, but it's still morality. We still think it's a gay disease. And I was just sharing with Minister Foote earlier, if it's 51% gay, it's 49% heterosexual. And we don't want to focus on the 49%. We want to just always point or pretend that it's only in Africa. And rates right here in Atlanta, I know you're from the CDC, love you dearly, but rates right here in Atlanta are higher than third world countries.
All right, number 9. Number 9.
Thank you for your presentation. My proportion quite simple, according to my concern with Black Clergy mission statement, is to provide leadership, advocacy, and service to the homeless, helpless, and the hopeless in our community. Advocacy. So I ask you this, will you agree we need to encourage ourselves to coordinate people to change their diet, get holistic food, fruits and seeds, and a simple way to do it, anything white or easy. And finally, we should discourage the sexual orientation of man with man and woman with woman, which is great. Because according to our ancient Egyptian civilization, we didn't have none of this until the Greek continent. So I ask you, why don't we get back to what we had, and surely, Reverend, we will have what we once had, a great people.
I have something to say. I can't help it. They just can't sit on me.
You didn't answer that.
Well, I mean, I only control me and my wife's bedroom. I don't control other folks' bedroom, but I understand where you're coming from. But again, we want to make it a gay disease, and folks, heterosexuals that are having sex as well need to be tested on a regular basis, take care of themselves, the diet. I mean, all of those things are important, but William can only control the 3 feet of space that William is in. So what other folks do is what they do. My ministry says we deal with all folks. I'm about the soul. I'm not concerned about their sexuality. I'm about spirituality.
The soul will have no concern.
I understand that.
Let's
but
give him a hand. Let's give him a
He's be rude, but he's gonna be rude.